Hello friends, I am Shantanu, your coach, and now we are going to cover chapter 6 of GST series where we are covering composite and mixed supply. First, let's try to understand the background of these two terms. Whenever there are two or more goods, let's say these are the goods A and B. So goods A, there is a rate of let's say 5%, and for goods B, the rate of GST is 12%. When these goods are sold independently, you are very much sure that what is the rate of GST. But the problem arises when you sell these goods in a combination. So two or more goods when sold in a combination, then it is difficult to identify the rate which will be applicable on sale or supply of these two goods in combination. So these goods, when supplied in combination, these can be treated as either composite supply or it can be treated as mixed supply. Now both these terms have been defined under CGST Act 2017. Under Clause 30 of Section 2, composite supply has been defined, whereas Clause 74 of Section 2, the mixed supply is defined. Further, you have to remember here important point that composite supply, the concept of composite supply is not new. It is an old concept. Under service tax, there were a concept of bundled services. So it is almost similar to bundled services. Composite supply is almost similar to bundled services, where the concept of mixed supply is a new which is defined under this act. So you have to be careful because question आ सकता है एग्जाम में. The concept of bundled services under service tax is similar to the concept of A, B, C, D. आपको options दे देंगे under GST. So you have to select the composite supply से ये similar है. Or they can ask the question in different way, like the concept of composite supply in CGST is similar to the concept of A, B, C, D under the previous service tax laws. So here you have to check with the bundled services. So now we are going to see the main differences between the composite supply. दोनों में डिफरेंस क्या है composite और mixed में, and second we are going to see the similarities between the composite and mixed supply. After that we are going to see the definitions which are given under CGSTX for both these two terms. Now let's see the similarities and differences between the mixed and composite supply. As far as similarities is concerned, in both the cases of composite and mixed supply, one thing is common. In both the cases there are two or more taxable supply. Words याद रखना है, two or more taxable supply. For example, A and B supplied together. So these supplies may be of goods or services or a combination of goods and services. So whether there is a mixed supply or composite supply, one thing is common, that there are two or more taxable supply of goods or services or both. Now the main difference between composite and mixed supply is, in case of a composite supply, the supplies are naturally bundled. So this is the keyword, naturally bundled supply is treated as composite supply, and these naturally bundled supply means these are usually provided together in the normal course of business and they cannot be separated. For example, you are providing goods. So goods are being supplied, goods are being packed. So packaging is an integral part. This is a service you are providing. And also you are providing the transportation with insurance. So these are naturally bundled supply. So the goods supplied along with the packaging and transportation with insurance is treated as composite supply. So if you carefully observe this, packaging is of these goods and insurance is also of these goods. You cannot take insurance of any other goods. So all these are naturally bundled. Whereas in case of mixed supply, the goods and services can be sold separately. So this is the main test where in case of mixed supply, you have to see that these are not naturally bundled. Naturally bundled नहीं है, आपने दोनों को mix करके supply किया है, and these can be independently sold. For example, there is a box. In this box, there are different items which are packed and supplied. For example, these are dry fruits दे रहे हैं, फिर cold drink दे रहे हैं, फिर fruit का juice दे रहे हैं, and also ice cream. So this is a pack. आपने दिवाली के केस में ऐसा normally packs देखे होंगे जहां पर बहुत सारे आइटम एक मिक्स करके आप सप्लाई करते हैं. So normally these items can be supplied and sold independently also. This will be treated as mixed supply. Further, very important thing which you have to note, there is no clear demarcation between composite and mixed supply. There is no list that these will be treated as composite supply and these will be treated as mixed. You have to apply the test of whether these are naturally bundled or not on each case. That is, on case-to-case basis, you have to check whether the supply is composite supply or mixed supply. Now, as far as tax liability under composite and mixed supply is concerned, this is very clear. In case of composite supply, you have to take the rate of GST which is applicable for the principal supply. So in this case, the principal supply is supply of goods, and after that you are doing packaging and also insurance. So here the rate of GST will be that rate which is applicable on these goods, not on the packaging or the insurance. Whereas tax liability in case of mixed supply, you have to take the GST rate which is the highest for all these supply. For example, for dry fruits, let's say example, it is 5%. Then for fruits, it is, let's say, 12%, and this is for 28%. Then for another supply, let's say it is 18%. So different goods which you are supplied, the rates of GST are different. But if you are supplying all these goods together as a mixed supply, the GST rate which will be applicable on all these goods will be the highest among these goods. So this is the 28%, for example. So this is the highest rate. So this GST rate will be applicable on this mixed supply. So this is very, very important concept which you have to understand. In case of a composite supply, the GST rate will be applicable as of the principal supply. But in case of a mixed supply, the GST rate will be applicable as of the highest GST rate which is applicable on any one item which is there in the mixed supply. Now let's see the definition of composite supply which is given under clause 30 of section 2 of GST Act 2017. So as per this definition, composite supply as a supply made by a taxable person to a recipient consisting two or more taxable supply of goods or services or both or any combination thereof, which are naturally bundled and supplied in conjunction with each other in the ordinary course of business, and out of these two or more supply, one of which is a principal supply. So as in our example, we have already seen, suppose these goods you have supplied along with the packaging, along with the transportation plus insurance. So here you can see the supply of goods, packaging material, transport, insurance is a composite supply, as supply of goods is the principal supply. Goods are important because if you remove goods, the packaging, transportation and the insurance become useless. So goods is the main principal supply, and GST rate which is applicable for these goods will be applicable on all these supply, that is the composite supply. Now let's see the definition of mixed supply which is given under clause 74 of section 2 of GST Act 2017. As per this definition, mixed supply means two or more individual supplies of goods or services or any combination thereof made in conjunction with each other by a taxable person for a single price, and where such supply does not constitute a composite supply. So whenever there is a combination of supply, you have to first check whether it is a composite supply or not. If it is not a composite supply, then only it will fall under the definition of mixed supply. So as in our example, we have already seen that there are different items which are packed and supplied. For example, canned foods, sweets, chocolate, cakes, dry fruit, aerated drink, fruit juice. When these are supplied for a single price, it will be treated as a mixed supply. So these items can be sold independently in ordinary course of business, but here they are combined together and these are supplied for a single price, then it will be treated as mixed supply, and the GST rate which is highest in any of these individual items will be up on this mixed supply. So as in our example, we have already seen, suppose 28% is the highest rate on any one individual item. So the whole price, let's say it is 10,000 rupees for all these items. So here the GST rate will be the highest, that is 28%, as in our example. And again, I just want to clarify that there is no clear demarcation between the composite supply and the mixed supply. You have to apply the test which is mentioned under the definition on each case. In each case, you have to check whether it's a composite supply or mixed supply, and accordingly tax liability will arise. And in case of a composite supply, the GST rate which is applicable on the principal supply, that would be taken for this composite supply, and whereas in case of mixed supply, the highest GST rate which is applicable for any item in this mixed supply will be taken as the GST rate for this mixed supply. Now the tax liability on mixed and composite supply is very much clear as mentioned under section 8 of CGST Act 2017. It clearly says that in case of a composite supply, the GST liability will be of that which is applicable for the principal supply, and जो GST rate principal supply को applicable है, that will be applicable on the composite supply. Whereas in case of a mixed supply, the highest rate of tax which is applicable on any one item of the mixed supply, that will be applicable on the mixed supply. Now we have already used the term principal supply in case of a composite supply. So this principal supply is defined under clause 90 of section 2. And as per this definition, the principal supply means supply of goods or services which constitute the predominant element of composite supply. So whatever is the predominating element in this composite supply will be treated as a principal supply, to which other supply forming part that composite supply is ancillary. इसका मतलब बाकी के जो items हैं in composite supply, these are just ancillary items, ancillary to main principal supply. So whatever rate, GST rate which is applicable to principal supply will be applicable on this composite supply. So in case of principal supply, two keywords you have to remember. One is the predominant element of composite supply will be treated as principal supply, and other supplies part of this composite supply should be ancillary supply to the main principal supply. So as in our example, we have already seen the goods are supplied along with the packaging, along with the transportation, along with the insurance. So packaging, transportation, insurance, all these are ancillary to the main goods, which is a predominant element in this composite supply.